Hand-catching massive fish requires a drained landscape. Before the seasonal rains flood the valley, one woman will empty an entire rice paddy to harvest what lies hidden in the mud. Here is how she builds to that moment. Deep in the tropical forest, she sets out to secure enough food for a prolonged camp before the harsh weather arrives. The river provides the most reliable calorie source, but extracting it demands a series of escalating tracks. She begins by utilizing a simple bamboo raft to navigate the shallow, rocky currents. Bamboo is naturally buoyant and incredibly resilient, making it an ideal vessel for accessing the deeper pools. Pushing against the current requires continuous physical exertion, burning the very calories she is here to replace. By establishing a mobile platform, she extends her reach beyond the immediate riverbank. The overhanging vegetation offers natural anchor points for staging drop lines. Securing these lines early maximizes her chances of a passive catch while she prepares more active methods downstream. Small hooks demand precise baiting to ensure a secure strike. She applies a high-visibility pink bait designed to mimic the flesh of fallen fruit or local insects. In these murky waters, visual contrast and strong scent profiles are critical for attracting predatory fish from the shadows. The red and yellow floats serve a dual purpose. They suspend the bait at the optimal feeding depth, keeping it clear of riverbed snags, and provide an immediate visual cue when a fish strikes. Passive lines, like these, act as early warning systems, mapping the activity levels in different sectors of the river, while she directs her focus elsewhere. Following the first successful strikes, she shifts to a more aggressive harvesting technique. A cast net requires precision timing and an understanding of the water's topography. When thrown, the weighted edges fan out in a perfect circle, sinking rapidly to trap anything caught beneath its canopy. The mesh size is calibrated to allow juvenile fish to escape while securing mature targets. Wading waist-deep minimizes her silhouette and reduces the vibrations that warn aquatic life of an approaching threat. The river's current works against the net, demanding continuous tension to prevent the weights from rolling over submerged rocks and releasing the catch. She carefully guides the mesh along the uneven bottom using the riverbank's natural contours to create an enclosed pocket. Working against the resistance of flowing water is exhausting, but the localized yield of a well-thrown cast net far outpaces single-line fishing. Sorting the catch immediately prevents spoilage in the humid forest air. A white container reflects sunlight, keeping the water inside slightly cooler and maintaining the fish for transport. She transfers the harvest while carefully maintaining the raft's center of gravity. Water is heavy and adding significant weight to a small bamboo platform alters its handling characteristics. Every movement on the raft must be calculated to avoid tipping the day's early gains back into the river. The immediate river zone has been exhausted, requiring a shift in location and tactics. A woven bamboo basket distributes the heavy load across her shoulders, leaving her hands free for balance. The loose weave allows air to circulate, preventing moisture buildup that could accelerate decay. Carrying water weight across slick, uneven river stones is one of the most hazardous tasks in the wild. The moss-covered rocks provide very little friction, and a single slip with a loaded pack can cause severe injury. She one-gates the shallows. She navigates the shallows deliberately, reading the surface texture of each stone before committing her weight. This transition marks the end of the mobile harvest and the beginning of fixed trap engineering. Flowing water, natural bottlenecks, and structural materials will determine the success of her next installation. Sewing. To scale up her harvest, she relocates to a narrow, fast-flowing tributary. She carries a pre-cut wooden frame, the foundation of a stationary funnel trap. This section of the stream features a naturally rocky bed and a concentrated current, ideal conditions for forcing aquatic life into a bottleneck. Moving heavy materials through resisting water consumes immense energy, but building directly in the flow eliminates the need to transport the finished trap over land. The surrounding dense canopy keeps the water cool, encouraging fish to travel through these narrow arteries during the heat of the day. The trap's architecture relies on interrupting the natural path of the stream. She positions the heavy wooden frame perpendicular to the current, finding a stable anchor point among the loose river stones. A flat, rigid structure placed in moving water experiences immense drag forces. If not seated properly, the continuous pressure will simply wash the assembly downstream. The green mesh is chosen for its camouflage. It blends seamlessly with the algae and aquatic plants, reducing the visual deterrent for approaching fish. Draping the net loosely allows it to absorb the kinetic energy of the water rather than fighting it rigidly. The goal is to create a permeable wall that lets water pass freely while catching any solid mass moving with the current. Securing the mesh to the frame requires absolute permanence. She drives steel nails directly through the heavy nylon netting, pinning it to the dense wood. In a dynamic environment like a fast-flowing stream, tied knots can swell, slip, or rot under continuous tension. Nailing the mesh creates a series of fixed load-bearing points that distribute the pressure of the current evenly across the entire frame. Working below the waterline is difficult. The water refracts light, altering depth perception, and softens the wood, making it critical to strike cleanly. The completed barrier must have zero gaps. Even a small tear or loose edge will be quickly exploited by the current, widening the hole and allowing the entire catch to flush through. Once secured, the wooden structure transforms into a highly efficient hydromechanical filter. A net alone cannot span the entire stream effectively. To maximize the trap's efficiency, she must engineer the flow of the river itself. She begins stacking heavy, dense river stones against the edges of the wooden frame, building two converging retaining walls. These dry stone barriers act as funnels, artificially narrowing the waterway and increasing the velocity of the current as it approaches the mesh. The stones must be massive enough to resist the amplified hydraulic pressure they create. By eliminating alternative routes, every fish traveling this section of the tributary is channeled directly into the capture zone. This technique leverages the stream's own kinetic energy as the driving force of the trap. Once the wings are completed, the system works silently, turning the geography of the riverbed into a dead end. With the barrier reinforced and sealed, the passive trap is ready for an active drive. She uses a long bamboo pole to violently disturb the calm pools upstream, creating shock waves through the dense water. Fish are highly sensitive to sudden changes in pressure and acoustic vibrations, interpreting the chaotic splashing as an immediate predator threat. The instinctual response is to flee downstream, moving with the current to escape the disturbance. By systematically working her way back toward the trap, she forces the aquatic life out of their hidden sanctuaries, beneath the banks and roots. The murky, agitated water removes their visual awareness, sending them blindly down the artificial funnel she constructed. The converging rock walls leave them only one exit path. The sudden increase in current velocity at the bottleneck strips away their ability to turn back, sweeping them directly into the waiting green mesh. The funnel trap has performed exactly as engineered. Concentrating the dispersed population of the stream into a single cubic meter of turbulent water. Retrieving the catch requires speed and physical dominance over the rushing current. She plunges her hands into the confined space where the panicked silverfish are fighting against the mesh and the hydraulic pressure. Using a solid plastic bucket, she scoops against the flow, trapping the fish in a rigid container where they cannot slip through her fingers. The sheer density of the harvest validates the hours, spent moving heavy stones and driving nails. In survival engineering, the return on investment must always exceed the caloric expenditure of the build. This single coordinated drive has yielded more protein in minutes than passive lines could gather in days. The green mesh continues to hold strong against the localized flood, proving the structural integrity of the hammered Keene Pond seams. The harvest is consolidated and prepared for transport. She secures a wooden lid over the woven basket using a high tensile plastic cord, lashing it down tightly. Live fish can easily thrash their way out of an open container during a hike. By locking the heavy bucket inside the reinforced backpack, she ensures the protein is protected from scavengers and secured against the rough terrain ahead. The journey continues downstream, moving away from the shallows and into a wider section of the river. The geography here shifts dramatically. Smooth, massive boulders replace the loose gravel, indicating a deeper channel with much higher flow volume. She prepares her gear on a stable rock outcropping, transferring the cast net from her basket. Large river stones covered in wet moss and algae are incredibly treacherous to navigate. Proper foot placement is critical, stepping in the seams between boulders, rather than on their smooth crests, lowers the center of gravity and reduces the risk of injury. The dense canopy breaks slightly, allowing sunlight to penetrate the deeper pools where mature, solitary fish hunt. To catch them, she must abandon the stationary traps and return to the active, high-risk casting technique. Throwing a cast net from a highly elevated, uneven surface requires exceptional balance and spatial awareness. She must generate enough centrifugal force to fully expand the heavy mesh without overbalancing into the rushing current. As the net hits the water, it sinks instantly, enveloping a section of the riverbed. Dragging the weighted mesh up through jagged, submerged rocks risks tearing the nylon, requiring a slow retrieval. The hydraulic resistance of the river pulling against the mesh is immense. When the net clears the surface, the glint of a large silver fish confirms the strike. The fish is heavily tangled in the complex mesh, a defense mechanism that forces her to carefully thread it backward through the nylon loops. She transfers the catch to a submersible red bag. Keeping the captured fish suspended in the cool, oxygenated river water preserves the meat perfectly while she continues to work. Each successful cast in these heavy currents demands a physical toll, but the size of the deep water catch provides a vital caloric surplus. Processing the harvest immediately provides the fuel needed to sustain the day's labor. She constructs a simple, elevated bamboo tripod to roast the fish over a bed of hardwood embers. Bamboo is an excellent makeshift grill. Its high moisture content and dense silica fibers prevent it from burning through quickly when suspended above indirect heat. Roasting whole fish over an open fire requires careful temperature management. Open flames would scorch the exterior while leaving the dense flesh raw. By waiting for the wood to break down into glowing coals, she utilizes radiant heat to cook the meat evenly. The rising smoke acts as a natural insect repellent, clearing the immediate camp area of biting flies, while the fat rendering from the fish bastes the meat, locking in essential nutrients and moisture. While the primary meal roasts on the thermal updraft, she maximizes her time by working the waters adjacent to the camp. Multitasking is a core survival discipline. Downtime must be utilized to gather future resources. She wades back into the shallows, casting the white net into a clear pool. The proximity to the fire allows her to monitor the cooking protein while securing an additional catch. the bamboo roasting frame is removed from the heat. The wood, heavily scorched, but structurally intact. Slow roasting over hardwood coals has dehydrated the fish's outer layers, transforming the skin into a protective, charred shell. She peels this brittle layer away to reveal the steamed, pristine white flesh underneath. The cooking process has broken down the complex proteins and neutralized any riverborne pathogens, yielding highly digestible calories. Fat and protein are the most difficult macronutrients to secure in a wilderness environment, making this meal a critical resupply of energy. She consumes the fish directly from the frame, minimizing cross-contamination and saving the time required to clean makeshift utensils. Sitting by the flowing water, the body absorbs the rapid influx of fuel. Out here, human endurance is directly tied to caloric intake. A substantial meal dictates how much physical labor can be expended in the hours to follow. The midday heat and the physical grime of the fire demand a reset. She plunges into the cool, fast-moving river, rapidly lowering her core body temperature. Submersion also removes the scent of wood smoke and fish oils from her skin, a practical measure to avoid attracting unwanted predators. After swimming, she retrieves her gear, meticulously gathering and inspecting the white mesh net across a massive, moss-covered boulder. The rough surface of the rock acts as a natural drying rack, allowing the sun and wind to evaporate the trapped moisture. Storing a wet net inside a packed basket promotes rapid bacterial growth and weakens the nylon fibers. Proper maintenance of critical survival tools is never optional. A torn net means lost food, and lost food compromises the entire expedition. Moving past the rocky rapids, she begins fabricating a different class of trap designed for still, deep water. She bends thin, pliable branches into rigid, circular hoops. Green wood is essential for this step. Its high sap content allows it to flex without snapping under tension. She binds the overlapping joints tightly with plastic zip ties, creating a lightweight, symmetrical skeleton. These circular ribs will form the internal structure of a collapsible cylinder trap, providing immense crush resistance against the weight of deep water. The cylindrical shape prevents the trap from rolling unpredictably on the uneven riverbed. A deep-water cage relies entirely on the quality of its bait. She breaks open a massive wild jackfruit, exposing the dense, yellow flesh. The thick, spiky rind requires significant force to breach, but the interior holds a highly aromatic, sugary core. Using a heavy blade, she sections the fruit into large chunks to maximize the release of its pungent scent. In stagnant or slow-moving ponds, chemical scent trails dissipate slowly, hanging in the water column for hours. The intense sweet odor of rotting fruit acts as a powerful beacon for omnivorous bottom feeders that rely more on smell than sight. By providing a high-calorie reward, she ensures the targeted species will actively seek out and push their way into the confined space of the trap. The jackfruit chunks are loaded into the center of the cylinder, safely out of reach from the trap's entrance funnels. She rigorously inspects the tension of every zip tie and the integrity of the plastic mesh. The design features inward-facing cones. Fish can easily push through the flexible opening to reach the bait, but the sharp angles of the mesh prevent them from finding the exit. Once the bait is secured, she transports the bulky apparatus through the dense fern undergrowth. The rigid frame makes it awkward to carry overland, but the lightweight construction allows it to be maneuvered without expending excessive energy. The trap is now a fully self-contained hunting mechanism, requiring only the right aquatic environment to deploy. She returns to the bamboo raft to transport the cylinder into the deep, still sections of the waterway. The long pole provides the leverage needed to maneuver silently without disturbing the sediment. She carefully lowers the large black trap over the edge, allowing it to sink under its own weight. The dark mesh is virtually invisible in the shadowed depths, eliminating any visual warning for approaching fish. Placing the trap from a raft, rather than wading, prevents human scent from contaminating the immediate area. Once the cage touches the riverbed, she immediately pushes away, leaving the submerged mechanism to work quietly in the isolation of the deep channel. While the cylinder trap sits in the dark water, she utilizes a secondary pond for active line fishing. The murky, algae-rich water provides excellent cover for fish, making them less cautious and more prone to strike at surface bait. She wields a long, tapered bamboo pole, combining extreme flexibility with the reach required to clear the overgrown banks. Bamboo's natural taper acts as a perfect shock absorber, transferring the violent energy of a thrashing fish down the length of the stalk without snapping the line. When the surface tension breaks, she hauls backward, using the rod's leverage to instantly drag the fish from the water and onto the sandy shore. Getting the catch onto dry land quickly neutralizes its swimming advantage. This steady, rhythmic extraction slowly fills her red storage bag, maximizing the yield from this isolated body of water. Returning to the submerged cylinder, she pushes the raft into the deep water to haul up the heavy line. The sheer weight of the trap breaks the surface, revealing the success of the jackfruit bait. The black mesh cage is loaded with frantic silver fish. The inward-facing funnels performed perfectly, guiding the scavengers in, while the rigid wooden hoops prevented the mesh from collapsing under the pressure of their panic. She carefully unseals the trap, pouring the concentrated harvest into a rigid white bucket. Consolidating the catch from multiple traps and bags into a single vessel is necessary before the final overland trek. The volume of fish gathered from the deep pond represents days of caloric security. The empty mesh cylinder is stowed in the woven basket, ready to be deployed again when needed. This phased approach to harvesting guarantees a consistent food supply regardless of shifting weather patterns or river conditions. The final stage of the harvest moves away from the flowing rivers and into the stagnant, man-made geography of a flooded rice paddy. These shallow, sun-warmed basins act as massive incubators for aquatic life, but the opaque, silt-heavy water makes traditional netting nearly impossible. She wades directly into the thick mud, relying entirely on tactile feedback to locate movement beneath the surface. The mud itself is a complex ecosystem, offering deep burrows and oxygen-depleted zones where specialized fish can hide. Feeling blindly through the dense sludge is slow, exhausting work, yielding only a fraction of the hidden biomass. To extract the true bounty of the field, she must alter the environment entirely, removing the water to expose the terrain below. To conquer the flooded plain, manual labor gives way to mechanical advantage. She uses a heavy steel hoe to excavate a drainage trench, breaking through the baked clay banks. This trench will channel the expelled water away from the depression, preventing it from seeping back into the catch zone. She deploys a portable, gasoline-powered water pump connecting a high-volume intake hose to draw directly from the deepest point of the paddy. This small internal combustion engine generates immense suction capable of displacing thousands of liters of water in minutes. She primes the pump chamber with a bucket of water to create a vacuum seal, adjusts the choke, and aggressively pulls the starter cord. The engine roars to life, immediately drawing the stagnant water up the hose and blasting it out into the adjacent field. This artificial drought forces the concealed aquatic life into an ever-shrinking perimeter of mud. As the water level plummets, the hidden architecture of the paddy is revealed. Deprived of their aquatic cover, massive, gray-scaled fish are left stranded in the thick, suffocating sludge. She wades through the heavy muck, seizing the disoriented targets with her bare hands. Without the buoyancy of deep water, the fish lose their primary evasion advantage, making them vulnerable to direct capture. The sheer scale of the harvest is staggering. These are mature survivors that have evaded traditional traps for seasons. now easily scooped into the waiting white bucket. The mechanical pump has condensed weeks of manual foraging into a few hours of intense, chaotic gathering. The bucket rapidly fills as she extracts the final heavy survivors from the drying basin. This concentrated effort marks the culmination of the entire expedition, from the flowing rapids to the engineered traps, and finally the mechanical draining of the Paddy. Every phase relied on reading the landscape and applying the right pressure. The work is now complete, the environment heavily altered to yield its resources. The landscape and the labor function as one interconnected system. Water drained, earth exposed, and a massive harvest secured. Instead of forcing the environment to adapt, she aligned her strategy with the terrain. A place of absolute quiet, punctuated only by the weight of a secure camp.